friends, happy Monday. This week's episode is going to be a little bit different than some of our past ones. Many of you who I talk with, especially recently, I've talked with a lot of women who are considering, do I want to continue my career in a more traditional employment sense, or do I want to branch out on my own? Do I want to start my own consulting or coaching or some other type of business? And once you start to ask that question and the social media algorithms that pick that up, you will be inundated with ads for people telling you how to find your niche, how to define your audience, how to make money, how to grow quickly. Really, that's what all of this is. There are so many advertisements out there for super quick growth, super quick clarity. And so I want to share with you a journey that I've been on for the past year. And this actually came up for me because I saw that a website that I had purchased a year ago came up for renewal, and I didn't renew it. But a year ago, I threw an ad on Facebook, got connected to a woman who promised through resetting my energy and giving me like a really clear workflow and a couple of other things that I could start to make $10,000 a month minimum. That was a no-brainer, easy 10K a month. And when I looked into it, the thing that really struck me was it was a very well-defined process. She had, there was like some energy healing or energy work in there, but there was a really clear process on, creating a video, creating a funnel through Facebook ads, creating funnels on the back end, hosting webinars. It seemed super legitimate. And this is where I'm so hesitant to share this because it feels so vulnerable, but I forked over $10,000 for this. I scraped, I made it work, and I followed the entire process that she laid out for me. I did the energy clearing work. I created a really cool video. I had they set up a really nice back-end funnel for me. I did a webinar. It's a webinar. It was a 10-minute video advertisement, essentially, which is why I don't do this anymore, because the more that I got into it, the more that I realized, one, this isn't for me. And two, this idea that you can go into something, and I've been doing this for 4 years now, working on Most True You. So this is not something that's new to me. But this idea that you can go into something and within 3 months be, going from making very little to making $10,000 a month, it's not realistic for the vast majority of people. It absolutely can happen, but there's typically so much behind the scenes that has already happened that goes into that. So anyway, I did all this, right? I spent the 3 months doing exactly what she asked. I was so excited about it because I was like, okay, I'm following her formula. I'm following what she says. This has to pay off. Even if I just make back my $10,000, I will feel good about this, because that means that I can repeat the process. Spoiler alert, I did not make back my $10,000. I learned multiple very valuable lessons, and I toward the end of this, I started connecting with a couple of other people who had been in the program even longer than I had, and their story was very similar to mine, right? They were not going to make back their $10,000, not through that method. It was a method that I do think worked probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. It is not a method that works for most of us starting our own thing now. But here's what I realized through that, and this is really the more important part of this episode that I want to share with you, is we have in our birth charts a lot of clues as to how we are individually meant to build success. We are not meant to do it the way that everybody else does. I do think that model worked really well for her, and knowing what I do now about her human design and about her birth chart, it actually makes a lot of sense to me why she's able to sell that so easily, why it feels so believable to so many of us, because it did work for her. And for someone like her, it probably will continue to work. But for those of us who are not given that kind of a design, who do not have that energetic blueprint, there are other ways that we are meant to build success. For me, I know, one, with my moon in Capricorn, I need to go step by step through the process, which is part of why that one had so much appeal to me, because it was a step by step thing. But I also know that I have Saturn in my first house. Saturn is a sign of kind of limits and constraints on one side of it. It's also how we build structure. And so I have to be the one. I can learn from others, but my structure has to be rooted in me, with that being in my first house. It's not something that I can just go, this worked for somebody else, therefore it's going to work for me. Plus, my Aquarius sun has that. And when we look at some of my other placements, there's just a lot of clues now, I know, that just show not only the timing wasn't right for that, but my energetic blueprint wasn't right for that. So this is where knowing your own chart is so insanely helpful, because it helps you go, okay, yeah, that's a valid way of creating a business. That's a valid way of making money, but is that going to be valid for me? And a lot of times it's not, because what we are seeing, especially those of us who are in this realm of wanting to start our own business or do something on the side even, is we're meant to build it kind of one step at a time. We are meant to be dedicated for something long enough and be passionate about something long enough that we build something sustainable, something based in relationships, something based on trust, something based on having proven ourselves again and again. So if you're in that position, I hope me sharing this with you is helpful if you're thinking about starting a consulting or coaching business of any sort, that if someone is promising you $10,000 months and you're just starting out, it is possible, but that's not how it works for the vast majority of people in business. That's not how it works for the vast majority of women. Doing business as a woman is different. It is for many of us, it is very relational. It is very communal. And it takes time to build up those relationships and build up that community. I think this is also really helpful for those who are employed and thinking about wanting to kind of go outside of employment for this, because I do think there's a lot of wisdom to staying employed for a while and making sure that you can do the thing outside of that, especially if it's going to be a pretty big jump. There are plenty of ways that you can do that jump, but you want to make sure that you've got like enough of a reserve financially to give yourself that option. I think this is also helpful for those of us who are going the traditional employment route and also looking at how can we do a coaching business or a consulting business of some sort. Letting your employment kind of support you as you explore that can be really helpful, because if you put too much pressure on yourself to make your consulting business ultra profitable, it's really easy to go into to get kind of sucked up into some of those schemes that are promising those high paycheck months without some of the building that needs to happen under that. So there's a few things that I do with women who I'm coaching to kind of look at when they're deciding, do I continue employment? Do I go off on my own? One of them is, of course, your chart. What do we see in your sun, moon, and rising signs? Your purpose, your needs, and your gifts. Are you going to be using those as you start this new business? What do we see in your second, your sixth, and your 10th house? Your house of how you make money, your house of how you show up in the day-to-day habits and routines, and then your house of career and legacy. What do we see happening there? Where are Saturn and Mars in your chart? That's super important for knowing, because that's going to give us clues on where you may have constraints and limits and how you need to build structure. That's Saturn. And Mars, what could be kind of a contentious thing that could get in your way. Same thing with Jupiter and Venus. Where are those at? Those can be very helpful planets. And Saturn and Mars can be really helpful too. I do want to say that. I have both of them in my first house for me, and Mars is on the exact same degree as my ascendant. So I've got my rising and Mars are both at 15 degrees of Libra. They're not bad signs, but we need to know where they are and how they play with your other planets to know, are they going to help you, or is it something that you need to be aware of as you're going into this? So there's different elements of your birth chart that we look at. There's also elements of what's going on for you in the coming year. What is your theme for the current year? Every year we go through a different house theme. So if, like me, for this year, I have been in a year whose theme was taxes and debts and other people's money and inheritance. Not necessarily, it's not bad energy, but it's not necessarily the energy for launching a $10,000 a month coaching business, right? There's other years that probably would have been more supported than the year that I'm currently in. Same thing with our months. Just like we go through each house every year, we go through each house every month. And so what's your main theme? What's your sub theme during the month? Those are things that we look at. So there's all of these different pieces that we look at to go, okay, yeah, that business model can work. Is it the right model for you? And is it the right time for you? Those are all things that we look at. There's progressed planets. There's a lot of other things we can look at too with that. But there's so many factors that you need to know about. And so all this to say, there's a lot to say with this. I wanted to share this because I think we often get discouraged. Here's the kicker for me as I look back, realizing it was a year ago that I started this process. And I remember sitting down with my partner as we got into this, just dreaming about what would we do if we had an extra $100,000? What would we do with that money? And it was so fun to dream about that. It was so fun to think about how we would invest some of that, how we would use some of that to have fun with our kids, how we would use some of that to do fun things together. There were a lot of things that we thought about. If we had an extra $100,000, what would we do with that? And looking back and going, wow, we did not make an extra $100,000 this past year, which is disappointing. I'm not going to lie. It's just, having gone into the year thinking I was set up for success that I had never seen before, and having this not come to fruition is disappointing. So I want to normalize that. But looking back on this year, the things that I've really learned from this are, one, this is a step-by-step, slow, disciplined, and it's a slow, disciplined, and dedicated process, building a business like this. It is not something that is going to be done quickly or overnight. There are ways to speed it up, but it's not something that's done overnight, and it's not something that's even done over 3 months necessarily. It is a multi-year endeavor. We have had success this year. It has not been 10K months, and we have had success, and I have got to meet so many of you wonderful humans and wonderful women who have seen what I do and say, yeah, you can help me. I would love the kind of clarity that you provide. I would love the deep dive into my soul, into my chart, into my cosmic blueprint, so that I can go forward in alignment with that. And getting to have those conversations with you has been more fulfilling than I ever could have imagined. I was looking for the fulfillment of $10,000 months in addition to what I have got instead, as I've continued to build this in a way that is much more aligned with me, much more aligned with my energy, with who I am, is a deep soul level satisfaction of getting to help you find who you are and live as her. It is an honor to do that. The ahas that have been had as we've sat across from each other on Zoom or next to each other at a festival and just talked about your chart, for you to be able to go, oh, that's how I am. And it makes sense. I've always done it that way, but now I know I'm supposed to do it that way. Y'all, for me, that is so much fun. So if you're going into this, know that it may be a slow build. Know that yes, you can make money. It may not be 10K months off the bat. It may not even be 10K years to start with. It can be. It absolutely can be. But I also want to normalize that that's not what everybody's trying to build. That's not what everybody's doing. And if that's not you, that is okay.